for quite a while now. He started his career with traditionally published novels and regular contributions to major publications such as the New York Times, La Cucina Italiana, Men's Journal, Parade, Rolling Stone, Condé Nast Traveler, Maxim, and more. He is now the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Appetito magazine, where he surrounds himself with the talents of chefs like Rocco DiSpirito and Rachel Ray. When he's not taking in the New York restaurant scene or traveling around Italy, Andrew continues to write novels and is moving into playwriting. Now, let's get to business. Hey everybody, I am Tatiana Ryan. This is the Businessy Podcast, and today I have with me Andrew Cotto, who is an award-winning novelist, the co-founder of Appetito magazine, and an Italian lifestyle contributor.
Yeah, I guess so. You can call it lifestyle. It's primarily based in cuisine.
Okay.
So I guess I'm generally considered an Italian food expert. The Appetito magazine is really rooted in Italian. It's called Appetito Italian Food and Drink, but we do delve into lifestyle because I think, as UNESCO just recognized, that Italian cuisine does inform lifestyle in a very positive way. So yeah, we sort of, we can't separate Italian cuisine from lifestyle because it's such a big part of it, and I love it.
Well, it's very popular, obviously, in Brooklyn, where you lived in Brooklyn for 25 years, where Italian lifestyle, food, and culture is a staple. Like, what drew you to that region?
Of Brooklyn?
Yes.
Well, it wasn't like I'm a New Yorker. I grew up in and around the city my entire life. But ended up in Brooklyn, when Manhattan got too expensive when I was a younger man. We ended up buying property over here and sort of just bouncing around Brooklyn. You can find Italian pockets everywhere, not just New York City. I'd argue anywhere in America there's going to be some sort of Italian influence because it's such a popular cuisine, such a popular culture. But I do really particularly like the Brooklyn environment, particularly where I am now, which is Bay Ridge, sort of out by the Verrazano Bridge. It's the historically Italian enclave. It has other ethnicities too, mostly Middle Eastern and Greek and Chinese. But the Italian presence here is really great in the shops and particularly restaurants. My favorite being Brooklyn Roots, where I was last night.
How did you get into bringing the contribution of the Italian culture and what you bring to the table?
Well, my first, effort at, media or narrative, I should say, really was as a novelist. And, I quit my corporate job in my very early 30s and to focus on finishing this novel that I've been working on. I actually ended up finishing it living in Florence in Tuscany for a year, but it was set in New York City. And it's, I'm Italian American, you have to write what you know. So I was writing what I knew, which was the Italian American experience. And of course, food was part of that, et cetera, relationships. I found that unintentionally that I just kept coming back to the Italian American experience, and food was a huge part of that. And of course, I have two novels that are set in Italy, but the rest of the other five are all set in New York City, and they all have Italian Americans in them. And I just love exploring that experience because there's so much depth to it. And I'm avoiding the stereotypes. I'm really trying to get it in a complex way, and it feels like it's sort of like my muse, is my mission.
Now, you started your writing career with traditionally published novels and pivoted to journalism, writing for such names like New York Times, La Cucina Italiana, Men's Journal, Parade, Rolling Stone, Condé Nast Traveler, and Maxim. Like, which do you prefer? Do you prefer contributing as a journalist or creating your own works with a publishing house?
That's kind of like choosing your favorite child. And I do have a favorite child, but no, they both know. But anyway, it's the girl. I like them both. I think they sort of feed off each other. I started with the novels. I had no intention of being a journalist. It never crossed my mind until my second novel came out, and my agent said to me, "You know what? We just noticed that in the first two books, there's a lot of really great Italian food writing." Right? I was like, "Oh, I hadn't thought that of food writing as even a thing." But they sort of encouraged me and introduced me to the New York Times, where I began writing this column. Not only me, I was contributing to a column called Neighborhood Joint.
Hmm.
Came out every Sunday in the metropolitan section, and it was a great column. It's basically like a tribute to a local business, right? Like a
Hmm.
local color type thing. It's not exclusively food, but I was doing lots of like butcher shops, fishmongers, Italian restaurants, and really cutting my teeth as a journalist. I think I wrote more neighborhood joints than anyone else has ever contributed. They ended up ending the column, after a 5-year run, which is what they do. Um, I think when they tallied it all up, I had more than anyone else. I loved that ability to tell a story about people. I mean, yes, I love food, but I'm not a food critic, right? And
Hmm.
not gonna judge anyone's soup, right? Or say, the pasta was not al dente enough for me and give it a 8.3 or a 4-star, 3-star. I don't do that, right? I tell the stories of people behind the food because I'm a storyteller, right? I'm not a food critic. I'm not an expert enough to really dig into or have any desire to really like be a critic. I'm more intrigued by the people behind the food. And I do lots of interviews at Appetito magazine of chefs and restaurateurs trying to unpack what it is that motivates them to do what they do because it's a hard life. I mean, and it's not necessarily one. In many ways, I feel it's kind of almost like being a writer or some sort of artist of some sort, where you have to really have passion for it because it's unlikely you're going to be very successful, right?
Hmm.
Get hard work, and there's nothing. It might seem somewhat sexy from the outside, but there's lots of insecurity in it, right? As opposed to say being a real estate agent or a life insurance broker or something more pedestrian.
Hmm.
So I love getting to the people behind it. So in either venue, whether it's novel writing or journalism, I'm interested in the depth of the humanity, the people behind it, and the fact that it intersects so often with food is just because I find that a great way to tell stories.
Well, it's not only that you're doing the journalism and you're writing the stories, are you also playwriting?
Yeah, well, I can't. I guess I can add playwright to my resume. One of
Hmm.
my novels is called Pasta Mike. Is my last book.
Hmm.
Ella, actually, it's sort of a hybrid memoir work of fiction in that it's about me. There's two characters, two main characters. Andy Cotto, who's me as a kid.
Hmm.
Mike O'Shea, was a real person. He was my closest, oldest friend. We were baptized together to see how far back we go. And he died in his early 40s from leukemia. And it
Hmm.
really had a tremendous effect on me. Partially because I just couldn't understand why I was so waylaid by it. He wasn't my brother or we weren't related. We were
Hmm.
friends, right? And I guess I'd underestimated the importance of friendship, particularly for men, in our lives. And so I decided to explore it through a book. And also pay tribute to my friend in the same time because he deserves tribute. He's an amazing human being, but I couldn't do it as a memoir. There's too many people, too many moving parts who were real people. His wife and kids and siblings and a zillion friends. And, I was married at the time and blah, blah, and I have kids and I just couldn't build us all fairly into it. So I took me and Mike and plopped us into a fictional setting. Then I took that novella and turned it into a play. It really works great as a one-person play.
Uh-huh.
It's a monologue, by the character me. And so
Uh-huh.
I did a performance of it at the Sheen Center on Bleecker Street in Manhattan back in October, reading from the script in front of a friendly audience, and it went really, really well. So I'm going to take it from here, sharpen it a little bit based on the feedback I got, then try and get into like the one-man play festivals.
That is pretty awesome.
Then make me an actor too, I guess. Though
You're doing so much.
it's a lot. I mean, I was pretty exhausted by it all, to be honest with you. At the end, I mean, I was like, after like you know, arranging the readings and the rehearsals and performing it, I felt like I just gotten married. How tired you married, like all the planning and the
Yeah.
event. You just like I needed like a honeymoon by myself to sort of recover from it. But yeah, it's a lot, but I love it, and I feel like sometimes you just have to tell stories, and this is when I really have to tell. So I'll suck it up.
Yeah, you not only contribute through articles, but you also have many appearances on New York morning shows and events spotlighting the Italian culinary scene with well-known names. Like, how important is collaborating with people outside the Italian culinary scene?
Well, I don't do too much collaboration outside the culinary. Well, I mean, yes, so I'll go on TV a lot. These shows
Hmm.
aren't Italian shows, but I go on either through promoting my novels and
Hmm.
or doing food stuff like with Appetito. So I'll go on TV. I'm going to go on Good Day New York, which is a
Hmm.
Fox morning show in New York on the 23rd and do the Feast of Seven Fishes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I've done an Easter thing on there. I've been on NBC and ABC, other capacities, and I love getting out of, and promoting. I mean, I have a magazine. Appetito magazine is my baby. I have a partner
Right.
in the magazine, but like, it was my idea. It's my baby, and I need to be out there publicly representing it. Just publishing stories every single day isn't going to grow our audience to the extent that it needs to grow. And so I love being the public face of the magazine. So I'll do interviews, I'll do podcasts like this,
Mm-hmm.
but TV is probably the biggest way, and I'm really eager to get on the national stage.
Mm-hmm.
I also do presentations like live in New York at the Columbus Citizens Foundation. I'm going to be at the Garibaldini Society in LA in March,
Mm-hmm.
talking about my how I use Italian food to sort of inform my work as a creative person.
We also just did a really big event with one of the past guests, Jason Burchard, and you were with not only with Jason, but you were also with Rachel Ray doing a big event.
Yeah, well, Rachel is a friend of mine. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
met through I can't remember, mutual friends. I think Adriana Trigiani, I think the author, introduced us, and I'd interviewed her and put on the cover of a magazine I used to be the editor in chief of, called Italian America magazine, which is Sons of Italy's magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I found her to be just a remarkable human being.
She seems like she is.
She's the kindest, most generous, most humble person too. And I try to flatter her when we do interviews and things, and she just hates it. Just so stop. And it's like but it's so true. We spent a morning together recently in Manhattan, and just walking around the city with her, man, she feels all the energy from people, and she's just going into her purse and giving things to help people. And I mean, she does
Mm-hmm.
help people in that event. Involved with the war in Ukraine, was something that she does on her own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would not believe how much money she's donated on all these different causes through her own foundation. But those causes have to be domestic. She can't, use her foundation to contribute to international ones. So she started something from scratch, and it's raised so much money for Ukraine and for this organization that provides hospitalization and treatment for those who are injured, particularly children. And so we had this event at Veselka in the East Village, a classic Ukrainian restaurant, been around for 70 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just magical to be there, man. Just kind people, And I joked when I wrote about it, like I've never seen Ukrainians blush, but they were like really just gaga over Rachel and what she's done for them. So I love being around people like that, and I'm certain that if I was ever in a position to do the same, I absolutely would.
Now, New York is a rapidly changing landscape right now. What excites you about the possible changes to the landscape of the culture of the city that are going on right now?
I'm not that excited about what's happening in New York right now. I still think it's the center of the universe, and I never think about leaving New York, and I would, I'll die here. Maybe splitting my time in Italy or somewhere else, but
Mm-hmm.
I love New York City. I always think it's going to be the most vibrant place. I'm concerned about the cost of living here,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily for me. I mean, I don't. I think it's fine, to pay all this extra money. I think it's worth it. But like getting new people to come in, and people who are not, particularly affluent, but make New York, so interesting in the past that it was affordable for lots of people. So you had different classes. You had lots of artists and creative types coming in, and yes, sleeping on couches and things. But like, it's just hard to get, to even have that sort of aspect of the city, which I find is the most interesting aspect. People who are like, who are from the Midwest
Mm-hmm.
want to be, they just have to be in New York to, to pursue their art or whatever it is they want to pursue, their dream, and they can't afford it anymore. So it's becoming a city of the very poor and the very wealthy. And
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, the very wealthy are just boring. I mean, I go to the West Village and all these rich kids down there, finance bros and NYU students from overseas. It's just like it just the character's not there. And we're missing a lot of the characters that used to define New York. And the restaurants can't stay in business, and the small businesses can't stay in business, whatever it is they sell. So I'm a little worried about New York. That being said, I still get so much energy from it. I was
Mm-hmm.
Times Square the other day, and then Herald Square, sorry, for something at Macy's, and it was Christmas time, and it was just like it's still the center of the universe. I just wish it was the center of the universe was more affordable.
As a storyteller, what do you want to portray to your audience about ethnic cultures?
Ultimately, my goal as a storyteller is to connect with other people and, evoke mercy and empathy and make people feel like they're not so alone.
Hmm.
The experiences of my characters, and I'm not just being Italian American. I just make them Italian American, but their experiences aren't unique. I mean, they're faced with conflicts and insecurities, and things they need to resolve. I mean, the conflicts that come, and I like sort of making people when they read my stories, really, really walk in the shoes of the characters and feel like they recognize those issues, whether they're male or female, age, whatever, gender, I covered that already, but like whoever they are, I'm big into like fostering humanity, you know,
Hmm.
like, that's kind of why I like food writing so much. I think like the table is a great place to sort of do the same thing I try to do with my books, which is make people, welcome beings.
Hmm.
I mean, I feel it's what I was put here on earth to do. That's a little grandiose, I know, but like that's what gives me purpose. I had a corporate career and I could have pursued it, and you know, probably been in a much different position than I'm in now. Financially, had I stayed in that field, but I have zero regrets because this is what I feel like I'm here to do, and I love making people connect. And when I get notes from people saying, "I read your book and it touched me," etc., that's worth more than anything I could ever imagine. And that's that's what gets me out of bed in the morning and in front of this computer and writing every day.
Co-founding Appetito magazine, what are the challenges you've encountered since social media has become the norm of sharing content that may not be so much media based, like magazines and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Media is really difficult. You see all these media companies shrinking or going out of business. The only reason we had the chutzpah to start a magazine, in 2023,
Hmm.
knowing my partner got in Richard Martin, has much more publishing experience than I did, and I was a writer. I had never been behind the scene before.
Hmm.
He was a managing editor at La Cucina Italiana magazine. They did a USA operation. They folded it. The USA operation, of course, the one in Italy will live forever, in 2023. And I went to him and said, "Hey, look, there's an opportunity here because no one else is exclusively doing Italian cuisine, right?" So I felt like there was a real, opportunity, to capture a very wide and deep market that wasn't being focused on exclusively. So we had that going for us. The hard part, yes, is that people still, getting people to engage in media, is very difficult. And social media tends to sort of steal that. Social media tends to be where a lot of the brands who we want to advertise with us and partner with us and collaborate with us,
Hmm.
they're more interested in an influencer, than they are in a traditional magazine. Though we're starting
Hmm.
to change that, thankfully, because we're starting to recognize that social media is fleeting. It was always my argument. It's like, yeah, so it got X amount of views, but how that's some kids scrolling.
Hmm.
Right? Magazines are concrete and they live forever. Print your recipe with us, and people will keep finding it on Google for days and weeks and months and years down the road. I mean, our most popular story is an apple cake recipe from like 2023 that people still find. And you're not going to be able to find that archive on social media. So yeah, we're battling the social media thing. That we're also joining the game. We have a sort of robust social media presence finally, and we're making reels for brands. We'd like to sort of say that we like to do editorial, social media, events, and even traditional media if they're so willing. So it's been a challenge, but it's fun. I like being challenged and
Hmm.
figure something out and being and sort of believing in what we do, because I do believe that this community of Italian food is one that's welcomed for everyone, and we
Hmm.
really foster that and be at the forefront of it.
Obviously, podcasts have become a big part of information sharing in conversational matter versus reading or watching. What are your thoughts of taking a new direction of media itself?
We did we launched an Appetito podcast. We had our first guest was Rocco DeSpirito. We had
Hmm.
a conversation. He's a friend of mine and a friend of the magazines, and we had a great conversation. And I wanted to keep going, and it just got so hard to sort of find time to get someone to the studio at a certain time and like make it all work. So we sort of put it on the back burner for now. But I do think there's other ways to reach. I do like the idea of the podcast. I think conversations are really important, like this
Hmm.
conversation we're having now. And it's digestible for people. You get to see the people, as opposed to reading text across a page. I mean, there's so much more media influence in visual than there is in editorial and text. I'll never abandon the written word. It's my passion, but I love it. We're trying to find ways to be more out front video wise, do podcasts like this. Um, Also, we're trying to launch our own show. We're looking for a sponsor for almost like a Stanley Tucci show. It's called Italy, New York. We're out around New York to the Italian and Italian American places, interviewing the people and trying the foods. So we're trying to be more, almost like there was a company called 0.0 that my partner Richard worked for years, and Anthony Bourdain was their big star. Like shows like that, and different sort of out front media. We have lots of people in our universe who are very, appealing on camera. We work very closely with this woman named Joanna Moeller. Her Instagram is spaghetti_roots_NYC. She's got a big following. She's really great on camera. And other people that we're pals with, that Milena Settipani, and there's a whole network that we hang out with, who would be great. So I'd love if I could get this far enough off the ground as I have our own little media empire and shows using the talent that surrounds us.
Well, also, as you just brought up, using not only people in the culinary industry itself, but using celebrities. You just brought up Stanley Tucci being in everything. How do you differentiate when you're dealing with a celebrity versus someone who is established in the culinary industry?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it depends on what their celebrity is rooted upon. Stanley Tucci was an actor, or is an actor, and a filmmaker, a writer. And he just happened to be passionate about Italian food. So to me, it's all about expertise. Right? If you have the ability, if you're an expert in this field, and then you have some other avenue that you're successful in, like Stanley Tucci, for example, I think that's great. I don't care, what's the background, as long as you are able to help, entertain and educate our audience. So I'll pull from any field. I love we have a column at Appetito called Italians in America, and talk to Italians who are here not for food. They're actresses or sculptors or something sort of in the creative space, but they're not here for food, right? And we interview them about what their experiences are like here with food. We always have, what's your favorite food to eat? Do you find Italian food in America good? And everyone's like, no. What's your favorite food?
Seriously?
they're like, what? They put, they get a little, they that classic Italian in America thing where they're always complaining that Italian Americans do cuisine differently. But they do find they have hard time finding the products that they're so used to getting, easily in Italy, etc. And there's places they find, they always end up finding a place they can get, places they can go where they feel like they're at home. But they also, I say, what do you eat? When you don't eat Italian, everybody says sushi. They eat a lot. I think most sushi eaters in America are from Italy. But I love that idea of bringing other people from outside the food world into the food world, because the food world really does include everybody.
Well, you just brought up Anthony Bourdain and that experience of having someone who is just world traveling and going from not only Italian culture to all over the world. What does that, being from the outside looking in as an Italian, and then maybe going to other cultures, as we just brought up with Jason Burchard, and going out as an Italian and being like, okay, well, we're doing this whole Ukrainian thing. What do you bring to the table with that, with Appetito?
Yeah, I'm with that. I think there's so much to explore, within Italy. I always joke that I'm never going to go anywhere else in the world besides Italy for my business and holiday, because there's still so many places, within the peninsula and the islands that I haven't been. I think I've been half the region, so I don't have enough time left on this planet to my intention is I find Italy so fascinating because I think it's 20 countries. There's 20 regions technically to make up the Italian Republic. I think that all the regions being really like their own country. I think there's infinite things there for me to explore through the lens of cuisine, to last me forever. But that said, I do think food is the universal language, but I think Italian is the best food for that. Hence the UNESCO designation that Italy just received, right? Which I had the pleasure of speaking about on the BBC. I think, but I really liked what Anthony Bourdain was doing later in his career. I wasn't such a big fan of his early on. I thought he was a little obnoxious. and he was like mean to Rachel Ray and things like that.
Really?
A huge chip on his shoulder, and I think
Yeah.
he found humility by traveling the world and like exploring cuisines. And he was really, I thought Parts Unknown was a great show, and I was envious of what he was doing, and also I admired it very much. I think his humanity really came out, to be humbled by the street food and the
Right.
corner of Bangkok, whatever. Right,
Mhm.
it was great, and I'd love to do that if I could be so lucky. To have that experience of being sort of a global ambassador for food, and saying like I think when you're eating with someone, you're basically involved in something almost religious. It's communing, right? We're eating together, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's the closest thing we get to like physical embrace. It's like hugging, for example. Right? And I love it. And I just interviewed Phil Rosenstein. Look, yeah, Rosen. Everyone. I'll have what Phil's having, right? That guy. He created Everyone Loves Raymond, and he's
Mhm.
a show on Netflix. That's He's just so passionate about food and enthusiastic about it. He has no food background, right? He's a a sitcom writer and a
Mhm.
but like his passion for food and like enjoying it with other people. It could be hot dogs, it could be beef Wellington, right? He's just so into it, and I love that enthusiasm that spans all cuisines. I mean, I'm immersed in Italian food because I'm an expert, but I would love to go taste anyone's food. I thought the Ukrainian food at Veselka was fabulous that night. You know, I'll eat it. I'll eat. Anyone wants to feed me, I'll eat it, and it's going to be right because it's
I
just
will try it.
having in the moment, right? And especially someone made it for me and welcomed me into their house or their kitchen.
Mhm.
I automatically, I think there's a huge connection between the emotions that we're feeling when we eat
Mhm.
and the way we perceive this taste. And I
Mhm.
do believe, that things taste better when someone has made it for you and they're
Mhm.
enjoying it with them, and the environment is good. I mean, I complain that like restaurants often are too noisy, right? And
Mhm.
I think that affects the way the food tastes. I think food tastes better when you're eating with someone that you care about.
Mhm.
We don't know, or even if you're alone. I mean, I do think that affects the way that our brain perceives flavors and meaning. So I do think food is kind of like that. I mean, I don't know if food can solve all the world's problems, but I think it's got a shot.
Well, you just brought up Italy having their different regions and all the food that goes into different regions, such as versus Naples versus, where you go in Italy. But it also drives the same way that, like the best Italian restaurant in New York. What is your opinion of the best Italian restaurant in New York?
I think it's very subjective. I mean, it's why I said before, like, I can't be a critic. People ask me all the time, "What's your favorite restaurant?" And my reasons that restaurants are my favorite have to do with things other than the food. Therefore, the experience that someone else I might recommend gets.
Hmm.
For example, Songa Napoli is like my hangout. It's a Neapolitan pizza place. I'm
Hmm.
West Houston Street, West Houston, and I think it's Sullivan. Where I go all the time because I love them. Right, they're the nicest people. Like the owner, Ciro, he's a Neapolitan, and he's got all this Naples energy, and his staff is great. He's got his right hand man has got Gigino, who's actually from Nepal, as opposed to
Hmm.
we hired and made family. I go to this place around the corner, Brooklyn Roots here in Bay Ridge. I was there last night. I mean, I go there all the time, but I get to a point where I'm so biased because of my experiences with the humanity there that I can't
Hmm.
be objective about the food. That said, I do have my favorite places in New York that I do think are really, really good. I love Sistina on the Upper East Side. It's a for special occasions. It's a beautiful room. It's a townhouse converted into a restaurant. The owner is from Italy. He's great. Giuseppe Bruno is his name. He's the largest wine collection I think in the world. Of these beautiful bottles of wine, and the room's just special, and the food's incredible. And then you go down to like I'll eat you street food and
Hmm.
similar experience too. I just think the experience is great, and I hate to get into the business of recommending places because I worry that people will be like, my experience will be different than theirs. But I could tell you all day if you want to talk about Thai restaurants in New York.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the ones that have the ambiance too, as you just brought up, having a really good wine list and really good appetizers. And, like you're not just stopping by a, you know, truck and getting a hot dog or something.
Yeah,
As you said, the people that you're engaging with.
Agreed. I think it's the overall experience, so it's all the sensories, I think one of my big problems now is sound, right? So if I go to
Hmm.
some, like, one of the reasons I avoid sort of the hipster places or the Instagram places is I don't like the scene. Right? So and I can't therefore judge the food, and not judge it. I can't enjoy the food as much as I would, as somewhere else, because it's noisy. It's people taking pictures of their food, for like ad nauseum. And I'm like, eat it, right? It's getting cold,
Hmm.
right there, and they're just posing, and they get the sense that people there aren't there to enjoy the food. They're there to say they were there, right? And to prove that I got a table at this place, right? So that bothers me. I love, casual places, where the owners. I just became friends with this guy, Giacomo, him and his wife, who's Chinese American or Chinese Canadian actually, have a place called Ciccio in on Sixth Avenue in Soho, which is a Tuscan restaurant that has opened Ciccio Chin Chin, which is Italian food with a sort of Asian influence. And they're nice
Ooh.
people, and I love their food. And I brought a bunch of our contributors there for brunch a few weeks ago. And everybody had the best time. We spent 3 hours in over brunch there. You woke up there at noon and left at 3. Just eating and laughing and talking. And yes, they were taking a lot of these people I invited were influencers because I wanted to spread the word about the restaurants.
Mhm.
But it was so much fun. So I have a hard time sort of you know not being biased towards places where my experience is good, and that doesn't necessarily mean that someone I tell to go there will have the same experience. As
Mhm.
like being known, like people I walk these places, that people they know that I'm do what I do. You know,
Mhm.
I get hugs. Like the fact that I get hugs at Song Napoli and Brooklyn Roost is part of why I go there too. It just makes the experience better. I feel welcomed. You know.
What do you see for competing restaurants in different cities now too that are up and flourishing now, DC, and if you go to Miami, and how they're competing with New York?
I haven't done enough of that. I always intend to do that for Appetito. I mean, like Philadelphia, for example. My understanding is that the food there is extraordinary, right? And not nearly as expensive as is in New York, which is a big
Mhm.
problem I have in New York. But like, yes, I think that the Italian food scene is really blossoming all over America in ways, because I think Italian food is growing beyond the Italian American canon, right? I think people are starting to recognize that there's regional Italian food, that can be enjoyed. And that's what sort of got me interested in Italy in the first place, was like in the '90s, eating at like restaurants that were like Po, which is food from Emilia Romagna, or Lydia
Mhm.
Bastianich's restaurant from northern Italy influence. Exploring Tuscan cuisine at Marpiti, like that in Roman restaurants. Lupo. That made me really excited. I think that is spreading beyond New York now in LA, and you're getting like regional Italian cuisine, the food of Campania, where Naples is, and people are starting to understand that there's all this really exciting food, and that Sicilian food, as we understand it in America, is very different than Sicilian food in Sicily. Right? The Sicilian food we get in America is really Italian American immigrant food, where
Mhm.
food in Sicily is very much fish and crudos and things like that. Um, there's a Piccolo Cucina little chain here in New York, which is Sicilian. Like, true, you go there, you eat raw fish and
Mhm.
roasted fish and pastas, and there's some meat, of course, on the menu. But I mean, that is what I think is making it bigger in cities like Philadelphia, Miami. Even Nashville's got a huge, Italian food scene now. Uh,
Mhm.
which is great. Charleston has a fledgling food scene, Italian food scene. And but
Mhm.
I do recognize that Italian food is the most popular food in America and the
Mhm.
world. All right, and I think you're getting a more sophisticated approach to it outside of the major metropolises like New York and LA.
You just brought up a great point of a city like Philadelphia having a phenomenal restaurant scene, especially Italian restaurant scene, but they're not necessarily really known for it. They're always pushing the cheesesteaks and everything, which we had Chef Brian Duffy on a year or two ago, and like talking about the same thing. But Philadelphia isn't really known for their Italian scene. What do you say about like these cities that they push one thing, but they have really good food there for like Philadelphia. That's where I'm from.
Um, yeah, I think if I had to pick a place that to go immerse in the Italian food out of New York, it would probably be Philly.
Okay.
The way they approach it, and they have it covered in sort of the regional Italian way and then the Italian American way. Well, yeah, but they have staples there. They're never going to get rid of the cheesesteak or the hoagie.
Right.
Venture of Philly cuisine, which I think in a lot of ways, does associate them with street food. But that market, the South Street Market, is a huge Italian, market, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing to walk around. But again, that feels like street food too. It feels like a big Little Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's really great fine dining there, and not fine dining, like really sophisticated Italian cuisine there. Michael Ferrari at I can't remember what it's called, but he's got a great restaurant. They're doing like Sicilian food, and I mean, I do think the people of Philadelphia love it, and they know it very well. And I think they'll start seeing people, come there, and it's just, I think what happens is like chefs will go like I can't afford it anymore in New York. I can't pay this kind of rent.
Mm-hmm.
Or just choose to like tackle new terrain. I mean, Anthony Scotto, his family owns Fresco by Scotto here in New York, a great Italian restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
He gave this over to he turned the restaurant over to his partners, which were his two sisters. One of them, Rosanna, is a big TV personality here and a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And he went down to Nashville and created like an empire down there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that happening, and then they start extending into Charleston, right? So I think that those entrepreneurial types are like, hey, let's take this really sophisticated Italian food that we've mastered in New York or Los Angeles and move it to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Or somewhere else. We get so many contributors writing about Italian food from places that I never would have thought of, like Austin, for example. Our
Mm-hmm.
editor, Sarah Hallier, has a kid in college at UT, and she's down there all the time, and she writes about Italian food in Austin. I'm like, can't believe it. Right? It used to be like nothing but barbecue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally true. And what you just brought up about chefs is totally true also. Like chefs are in the major media spotlight right now, having cooking shows and channels for themselves and like gathering over so many cultures. Who has been your favorite to follow?
I'm going to be biased and say Rocco DiSpirito's like he's a friend of mine. He's
Uh-huh.
the first celebrity chef I've ever became friends with, and I think he's such a humble, sweet, incredibly talented guy. I like
Uh-huh.
reality on this. He's humble, when he's on TV, and I mean, he was huge. He was the first celebrity chef, as far as I know.
Uh-huh.
Like people like Jacques Pepin, and Julia Child, and maybe Emerald. No, I think he was before Emerald.
Uh-huh.
So he's been doing this since like the '90s, and he's still great. I love him. Rachel, of course, I get biased towards people I'm friends with, but
Yeah.
that's why they're my friends. They're good human beings, and that's why I champion them. I used to love Sarah Moulton. She's still around. She's still. I think she taught me how to cook. I think her and Mary Batali taught me how to cook. Watch
Mm-hmm.
work. When I was supposed to be working in my old career, when I was working at home, I still spent my mornings watching. Between meetings and calls, like watching Food Network. Um, um, Lydia's great. I mean, there's so many really wonderful people. I think if you cook for people, there's some sort of humanity to you.
Mm-hmm.
I just interviewed Stefano Secchi, who's got Res Dora and
Mm-hmm.
Masada, these restaurants in New York City, which are Res Dora's Emilia Romagna food, got a Michelin star, and Masada is sort of his new one, which is companion food. He's brilliant. I mean, we worked for Massimo Bottura in Italy for 5 years. I think he was over there. Or different places in Italy for 5 years. But one of those stints was with Massimo, and he's super talented and really well known here in New York and America. And I like him immensely. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I like pizza makers, a lot. Anthony Mangietti from Napolitana, which is considered he wins that 50 top pizza thing and top pizza in the world thing, but he doesn't care. He's like so humble and just a
Mm-hmm.
great guy. I think a lot of people who in the kitchen are both left brained and right brained. I think
Mm-hmm.
like engineer skills first and foremost, mechanical things that they turn into like cooking, but they also have like humanity and passion and and a desire to communicate
Mm-hmm.
through their food. So I find them really interesting people. I can tell you, I can keep going, but I think you get the point. I like chefs and restaurateurs.
You just brought up the infamous Julia Childs and going from being that chef to being the personality on TV also and being able to work with any type of restaurant or recipe or things like that. How do you go about with some of the chefs who also do not only Italian food, but all, like I said, the other cultures?
I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, I went to a thing the other night at Degustibus Cooking School. It's actually a cooking school in Macy's. I mentioned I was at Macy's. I was there for this. The eighth floor of Macy's is a cooking school,
Uh-huh.
right where the Santa land is. Right, so all these kids are lined up to get a pick to sit on Santa's lap, and then there's like people, middle-aged people lined up to go do a feast of seven fishes.
Uh-huh.
Thing in the Gustabus Cooking School, but this feast of seven fishes, the chef there is head of the Tao group, which has tons of different kinds of food, Greek,
Mhm.
Chinese, French, Italian, and he did his feast of seven fishes that was not necessarily Italian. I mean, he
Mhm.
base, he had tuna tartare, which I guess can be Italian, but it was on a rice cracker on a rice thing. Um,
Right.
they had struffoli for dessert, but it really didn't feel they're like a Greek snapper. So I think I'm totally down with different kinds of food. I'm not gonna be ever with food, be provincial and say like, I only eat Italian food.
Mhm.
I pretty much only do eat Italian food. That's
Okay.
that's because I'm so used to it from a dietary standpoint. I
Mhm.
eat like the olive oil based things, and if I ate like General Tao's chicken, I'd go to the hospital, bro. No,
Now you have books coming out, hopefully soon.
yeah, I just finished. So two of my books are a noir series, which is really a really fun sort of genre for me to write in, and particularly because not surprisingly, the protagonist is a chef as opposed and a restaurant owner as opposed to a detective. But they're pretty gritty noir with a poetic sensibility, I think, and the character's voice is great. And I just finished a third in that series. The first one's called Attleboro Blues. The second one was Black Irish Blues, and this one I just finished called Harlem River Blues. There's also a musical component to them. I love music as well. So my other passion.
Okay.
And I finished that. Then I'm going to start. I have two books called the Italian Adventure series. They're set in Italy, called Cucina Tipica and Cucina Romana. I'm going to start working as soon as I finish getting this play completed. The rewrite of Pasta Mike the play. I'm going to finish. I'm going to add another to the end the Italian Adventure series with a third title.
Now, where can everybody find those books?
The books are traditionally published, so you can find them, of course, at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. But if you wanted you want to support your local bookstore, you can go there. They can order them. There's national distribution through my publishers, but they can also get them at Amazon or Barnes and Noble. They're available everywhere.
Okay. And also Appetito magazine.
AppetitoMagazine.com, right? Which you can go to and check out the content, which is great. We have news stories every single weekday, 2 or 3 a day. We have a holiday gift box too, which is a really good deal. It's this beautiful extra virgin olive oil, some biscotti, some pesto, a book for like $49.99. It's like $80 street value delivered, $49.99. We have a newsletter you sign up for, AppetitoMagazine.com. All my information is at AndrewCotto.com. So my books, you can find my appearances, you can watch, and there's links there to Appetito and also the things I've written for the New York Times and other publications.
Okay. And where can people find you on social media, sir?
At Andrew Cotto, Instagram and Facebook. I can't do TikTok though. I wish I could.
You're gonna have to learn. That's the big one right now.
I know, but I just don't. I think it's super fun. I mean, yes, but no, not yet.
All right. Well, we will be linking everything within the body of this podcast, so make it very easier for our listeners to go to all of these websites and check out Appetito Magazine, also to check out your books and everything. Andrew, this has been such a pleasure having this conversation about not only Italian food, but like food from all over.
It was great. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it. I am Tatiana Ryan. This is the Businessy Podcast, and this has been Andrew Cotto.
Ciao.